9 to 5.
Hi, this is Mitch Stephen, and I'm here with 1000houses.com, and today we're going to talk about landlocked properties. What is a landlocked property? Well, a landlocked property is a property that you can't get access to from anywhere on the ground. I mean, you could fly a helicopter and land on that property, or you could jump out of a plane in a parachute and land on that property. But if you're going to walk to it or drive to it, you're going to be trespassing on someone else's property to get to it, i.e., there are no designated easements to that property and there are no roads to that property. So it is landlocked. Okay. Now, this is interesting because it dramatically drops the price of that land for you or me or many, many millions of other people. The fact that you can't get to it without a helicopter really, really reduces the price of what it's worth. However, if you can get it purchased, the people that are right next to that land, it has a value like no other because it's the only land they can acquire that's contiguous with their land. The people that have that land landlocked might be very, very, very interested in owning that piece finally. You know they know about it. They've known about it for years. Why haven't they bought it before you? Probably because they hate each other. They're neighbors and they didn't get along. And that landlocked property owner is not going to sell to the next door neighbor or the guy that surrounds him for anything in the world because he hates that SOB. Okay? See it all the time. Because there's no reason why a person should be holding on to a piece of landlocked land because someone has some dirt right contiguous with it that would really like to own it. Almost 90% of the time, the people that are contiguous with that landlocked piece would love to own it. So why don't they? Well, because they have personality problems. They don't match. They're at odds with each other. So they might just sell it to you for a pittance just to piss the guy off, just to piss their neighbor off. Okay? So you don't know until you start making phone calls and talking to these people. When I'm doing the purchase of a landlocked piece of property, it's kind of a catch-22. Do I call the neighbors and see if I can have it pre-sold before I talk to this guy? I don't think so. You don't want to go kick a sleeping dog. Right now, this prospective buyer that you're looking at talking to about selling this landlocked piece of property, if you can get possession of it, you don't want to wake him up that that you're in play over here. You don't want to wake him up. At worst, you want to wait till you have a contract, a solid contract, and then tell them who they'd like to be the new owner of that land. Ask them if they'd like to be the new owner because you have a contract to buy it and you're going to buy it. I just simply state you're the first person I'm coming to because you're the one that seems like should be the most interested. It touches your land or your land surrounds this land. Now, what I really like is when there's 2 or 3 other properties that touch the landlocked property. There's 2 or 3 other owners. So I got more choices to sell, I'd rather have 3 people that touch this landlocked piece of land, that their property is contiguous with it, than 1. Because if the one guy doesn't want it, I don't have any other place to go. And now I'm stuck. I'm the new owner of a landlocked piece of land. Now, can you get access to the land legally? Yes, you can. You'd have to sue for an easement, and someone has to give you an easement to your land. At least in the state of Texas, it's against the law to disallow a man to access his land. And if you have to take it to court and say like there's more than one contiguous owner, let's say there's 3 pieces of property that could buy this landlocked piece and use their property to get to it. Well, the court's going to figure out who has to give you an easement, and whether it's 40 feet wide or 60 feet wide or 20 feet wide, and they're going to pick the shortest route to a main road. So you can probably look at an overhead map and see where that judge is probably going to tell you you're going to have to go. And he might find some old easements that were once there that were well traveled, and he's just going to designate that easement now. But typically they'll pick the shortest, least amount of land that someone has to give up. The reason why they're picking the shortest path to a main road is that person that owns that land that the judge is going to give an easement across the top of, he wants it to be the smallest, most reasonable piece of land there is to get to the main road. So you can probably figure out who is going to have to suffer the easement. Now you're going to have to pay for that land, and you're going to have to agree on a price per square foot for every foot of that road that you're going down, for every square foot, okay? But there are ways. The problem is this can take last I heard, this in the state of Texas, this could take about $60,000 and maybe take, I don't know, a year or a year and a half to get through. So is it worth it? Well, I don't know. Is the land worth $1 million or is it worth $50,000? You know, you have to decide on what it's worth. But hopefully you could strike a deal with one of those contiguous landowners, you know, as a gentleman and a neighbor, and shake his hand and agree to pay for the road and agree to put up a fence between, you know, the road and his land. And maybe they need some money. Maybe they need to give up, you know, a quarter of an acre of their 200 acres to have $20,000 or $30,000, whatever it comes out to. You know, maybe it works out. So you try to talk to the neighbors first and strike a deal with a handshake, and then a written contract, and then a closing. But I would never do any of this without the advice of a lawyer, because when you're dealing with easements and landlocked land, you're going to want to have a lawyer that's been through this ball game before and knows how to play, because there are things that we just don't know, and you don't want to find out in a real game, because chances are when you find out surprises in the middle of a real game, you're fixing to get your ass kicked is what's probably going to happen. So normally the surprises are not good for you when there's a surprise. So let's get the surprises out of the way, hire a good attorney. All right, this is Mitch Stephen with 1000houses.com.